All right, so if there's somebody from staff who's on the line and you can't see my screen, send me a text frantically, because I will get started. So the reason for this webinar, first of all, thanks everyone for joining. There's just been a lot of questions recently as we approach this June statement that just got released last week as to what the PPD was going to be. So the PPD stands for Producer Price Differential, and that's a new feature of the Federal Milk Marketing Order. We didn't have that under the California system. And so it's been a learning curve for all of us, and especially as we get into this month, it's particularly striking the way it hit the milk checks. And so a little bit of a explanation as to why it happens and why most people had a really big deduction on the milk check is I think really important. And so since the implementation of the Federal Milk Marketing Order, we've had a range of producer price differential. And so, you know, if you look at the beginning, the order started in November 2018. Look at the bars, you know, it's positive around $1 or so every month. That producer price differential was positive. And so most people really, I mean, it wasn't too concerning because it added value to your milk check. And so usually when that happens, it's, you know, less likely to question why you get more money than you otherwise expected. So you look over time, last fall, in the fall of 2019, we actually hit our first negative PPDs, and by quite a bit. I mean, when we got to November, it was negative over $3. And so that started to raise some eyebrows, and we had some discussions around it, but it quickly went away. And, you know, since the beginning of 2020, we've had some negative PPDs, but nothing, you know, groundbreaking in terms of the value that was on the PPD. If you just add the month of June, you can see here my chart scale at to reconfigure because we had this new record negative PPD. And so the PPD was negative $7.91. So much higher, I mean, more than double what we had seen since a year ago. And so obviously that was surprising for many people because we've been talking last month, cheese prices are going crazy. There's a lot of improvements in the markets. And so people are expecting a much higher milk check. And then all of a sudden it's high, but then there's this deduction that really makes it not as high as what you would otherwise expect. And so there's a reason for that. And we'll kind of go through why we have the PPD. And some of that, we'll take a step back and look at pooling under the California Federal Milk Marketing Order because it also impacts the PPD. And so just a little bit reminder, under the federal order, you know, all the class 1 handlers have to pool, but for the other processors, they have the option whether they participate in the pool or not. And so that's a big difference from what we had under the California system because all the milk was in the pool back when we had the California system. Now with the federal order, there's an option. And so every month, there's a pooling decision that's made. Basically, if the handler's class price is below the blend price, we could call it blend price or pool price, whatever the average price is, dollars in the pool. If their class price is higher, they have an incentive. If it's below the blend price, they have an incentive to pool. If it's above the blend price, if their class price is above the blend price, then they have an incentive to depool. And so we'll take a little bit of a numerical example here. I use good prices because nobody likes to look at $10 milk. And so here's the basic of pooling. You might have seen me use this chart before. I just think it's an easy visual. We look at class 1, 2, and 3, and 4. They each have their own class price. So that's the line labeled price. And so this would have been like under the California system where, you know, everything would have been in the pool. You take all these dollars from all the milk that's produced in each of these classes, you average it, and it gives you the expected blend price. So in this case here, if you average all these prices with the volume that's produced in each category, it blends out to $21.34. If we go under the federal order where we had the scenario, and now the class 3 production, which is $22, was, if you go back here, $22 is higher than the $21.34. So class 3 plants can say, well, you know what, $22 is higher than what producers are going to get anyway, so I might as well keep the difference between the two, and I can still pay my producers $21.34 or whatever else I want, but the difference between the blend and the higher class price can be kept with the processor. And so what happens when you take the highest value milk out of the pool? well, it lowers the blend price for everybody else who is in the pool. And so if you see the percentages are pretty small, but now on this chart, we had 45% milk that was class 3, which is about what's produced in the state and what we had under the state order. Now, if all the milk is out at 0%, that lowered the blend price to $20.80 for everyone that was left in the pool. If we take another example here, this is just a flip side because now we have a class 3 price that's higher, but it can also happen for class 4. If class 4 is higher than the expected blend, you look at this scenario here, class 4 processors are required to pay $23. If they want to participate in the pool, the expected blend is $21.49. While in this situation, which handlers choose to depool, it's not class 3, it's class 4 because their price is higher. So what happens when you take the class 4 out, that $23 milk, which is the highest milk out, then it would have done the same thing. I don't have the number here, but it would have brought the expected blend lower. And so we've seen really big changes in the makeup of the pool in California since we started the federal order. And that's this little background on the pooling is why this pie here has changed so much, because the processors have the option to go in and out, except for class 1. So if you look on the blue here, which is class 1, they don't have a choice. When you take milk out, that's one of the side benefits. If you take a lot of the other milk out, that makes your portion of class 1 go higher. So in California, it's probably about just 12% of the milk that goes to class 1. But looking at this chart, you wouldn't be able to tell. The reason for that is because not all the milk in California is in the pool. So that makes that class 1 share be a little bit higher, which is great because class 1 is typically the highest value milk. I say typically, not always, but it usually is. And so in this chart here for June, you can see that we had 24% milk that was class 1. Class 2 was 8%. You can barely see class 3 at 0.7% there. So it's just might as well not be there, right? There's not a whole lot. And class 4 is taking 67% of the pool in June of 2020. Now we know we're not producing 67% of our milk's not going to butter and powder. But that being said, because the incentives are what they are with the class 3 price being so high and the class 4 being so low, class 4 has really good incentive to be in the pool, whereas class 3 has an incentive to stay out. And so that's why we're seeing this, this pie currently of what the makeup is of the milk in the pool. It's not the makeup of the milk in the state, it's just what's participating in the pool, because under federal order, it's optional. Where in California, that pie was really steady. And so this is just over time, the share of the different classes that have gone in the pool. And you can see the blue section, which is class 1, relatively constant. The reason for that, they're always pooled, but if there's more milk in or out, that changes their percentage a little bit. But over time, pretty consistent. Class 2 is about the same. But if you look at class 3, which is the gray area, when we started the federal order, most of it was in the pool. And now it's opposite, where we didn't have a lot of class 4 milk in the pool when we started the federal order, and now we have a lot. The reason for that is the price relationship between the two has really flip-flopped. So when we started the order, class 4 was high and class 3 was low, and now is a total opposite, where we have class 3 is higher and class 4 is lower. And that relationship tends to be a little bit more common. If you look over time, it's more than half the time that class 3 will be higher than class 4. But it's not a huge margin. But that what we're in now is really an exception. But over time, class 3 does tend to be a little bit higher than class 4. And just to compare, this was what the pie looked like in California from January to October 2018, which really is probably a good representation of where the milk in the state is going for production. So class 1, again, that blue chunk, class 2 and 3, I wrote them together because under the federal order, they're one class. Class 4A is the yellow. Class 4B is the gray. And so we've changed this makeup, not because we changed our production patterns, but really because the depooling allows this to change on a monthly basis. And the reason why it's important is because that has an impact on your price, as I mentioned earlier with the chart on the little categories and how that impacted the blend price. Before I go into the details of the producer price differential, maybe I could take a little break and see if there's questions. And let me see if I figure out a way to unmute everyone at once. Is there a way to do that? I don't know. I think I can. like the little, is that a children's book? Little train? I don't think I can unmute everybody at once. Well, that's problematic. You all ask all to mute. Oh, there we go. Okay. So I give you the option to unmute. If you have a question, I will remute in a second, but if there's a question now, I'd be happy to take it. Okay, there's going to be more time for questions.
How long can you depool?
Oh,
is it for a month
question.
or a year?
So they can do, under California system, it was a yearly decision. Under the federal order system, it's a monthly decision. The only caveat is that if they depool the next month, they can only repool 110% of the month before. So let's say that, you know, a plant went all the way down to they only have 100 pounds in the pool. The next month, they can only put 110. But if they want to take all of it out one month, they can do that, and then they can progressively go back in, but it can only be 110% of the month before. So if they have 100 pounds in June, they can only put back 110 pounds in July. And it seems a bit counterintuitive because it seems like we'd want them to come in the pool, but it's a rule to prevent significant swings on a monthly basis. Whether that's really effective or not, I mean, that's a good question, but it really was put in place for that reason, is to prevent significant gaming of, you know, taking huge volumes without thinking about the future price relationship.
So you said, so to be clear, you said when you depool, you must depool for only a month. Is that correct?
It's a monthly decision, correct.
Okay. All right.
Annie, but if I'm not mistaken, if you depool class 4, so many pounds, each month you could elect to move it to class 3 or back and forth. So that takes away the bringing it back at a certain time. So a co-op could leave like 20% of their production depooled and move it in and out of class 3 with no repercussions. Is that correct?
Yes. So for co-ops that have both class 3 and 4, it does afford them a lot more flexibility. So if you were just a cheese plant, for example, you know, your volume would always be on the cheese. But if you have both, if you have class 3 and 4, it doesn't really matter where you put the milk, that percentage does change. And so for a co-op that has, or a plant, you know, a company that has, you know, for your co-op example is accurate. If you have both, you can basically circumvent that repooling rule because you can move the milk from one category to the other.
Did I see correctly that since the federal order, most class 3 plants have had their milk depooled? Is that correct?
So if you go back, I don't know if I can go back on my slide here. Yes, I can. Okay. If you see this chart here, you can see that at the beginning of the federal order, the class 3 milk was pooled, but if you know, starting summer 2019, most of the class 3 milk was out of the pool. So yes, it was depooled. And some of it too, plants have the option if they don't want to play that monthly game. I mean, it's not really a game, but it's a monthly decision. Plant could decide to be outside of the pool all the time. You know, they could have some milk that they choose to always leave out of the pool, so that, you know, they don't need to make the decision on a monthly basis, but a lot of them do because it's, you know, it's advantageous. If your class price is below, why not participate in the pool and get some revenue out of the pool?
If my milk is at CDI or Lando Lakes in California, generally speaking, what was the difference in my price this year, this month versus what it would have been in the California milk pool?
Well, jumping right to the conclusion here, that's a very valid question. And I figured this question would come up, so I did an estimate of what the California system's price would have been. In June, if you look at the regulated price, it looks like the California price would have been about $4.50 higher in the month of June. And there's two reasons for that. One is because all the higher value cheese milk would have been in the pool, so they would not have been able to be outside the pool. And also because the California system used CME prices, and those prices have been going faster than the USDA price, it would have raised the class 4B price faster than the class 3 actually went up. And so now that being said, it would have been higher in June. I have, I've been conducting this price survey. I think a lot of plants, a lot of co-ops and proprietary processors have increased the premiums they paid in June versus months before. And so I think that made up some of that, realizing that, the market's going up and producers are not getting any value. The co-ops, for example, who are gaining on this depulling game can choose to pass those dollars back to producers. And we've seen a lot of that in June. So it's not, that 450 difference is really on the regulated price. So if that's your question, I would estimate it at 450 in June. But I think ultimately on the check, most people, that difference will be a lot smaller than that. And even for some people who are paid directly on cheese milk, I think their price is higher right now than it would have been under CDFA.
Whose pocket is my $4 in?
So if your milk check, if your milk check doesn't have like a big premium, and you have the full negative PPD, and you don't have a big premium, then it's your processor is basically the difference compared to if you had the regulated system in California that would have been required to pay you that.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so I will jump in the PPD because I think these questions are kind of getting, I think it's kind of relevant to the PPD here. So I will jump into that and I will unmute here in a few more slides to get to questions. So mute, yes, okay, I think I got it. Okay, so back into, I was past this. Okay, so the producer price differential. Big definition here. Basically, what it means is that producers in federal orders are paid per pounds of butterfat, protein, and other solids at class 3 value. And the PPD is the adjustment to that value relative to the value of the milk in the market. So I'll give an example because I think the definition doesn't mean a whole lot. So as the basics, the producer price differential, if the value of the pool is equal to class 3, so let's say that our average pool price, if you take all the classes, if that's equal to the class 3 price, you would have no PPD. If the pool value is greater than the class 3 price, you have a positive PPD. And if the pool value is lower than the class 3 price, you have a negative PPD. So we'll take an example to go a little bit into the June situation, what happened. So let's just say that this circle here, let's just take the circle, and those are the pool dollars available. So it could be any amount, but this is the amount of money that's available in June. Class 3 price was really high, and the FMMO pays on class 3. So this is what they paid. This giant circle here is what everybody got paid on the component prices. If you look at your statement, you'll see that your fat, protein, other solids were paid on class 3 price components. Class 3 has been through the roof, which is great. But unfortunately, USDA paid you all that money. And really in the pool, they only had this portion here. And we talked about depulling earlier. What they're paying you on is not even in the pool. So it's not even a representation of the pool dollars available. And so somehow they need to account for that because they paid you all that money and the pool, as they paid you this giant circle. The small circle is the pot of money available. That doesn't work. In Sacramento, we see that all the time. There's funds available, small circle, giant circle, what the plan will cost, and somehow they magically make the two merge, right? But FMMO, a little bit more rational. They have to make those circle match. And so go back to June. We have these pool dollars available. What you get paid on component is this really big amount of money that's higher than what really FMMO can afford. So what they do is they take the dollars out of the PPD through the PPD, so it's like red area, to bring it back to what the number should be to match the dollars available in the pool. I don't know why in the first place they don't just pay the pool dollars available. Like in California, they calculated all the class prices, all the volume, they averaged it out, and then they paid the average pool price. Somehow in the FMMO, they decide to pay on class 3 and then make this adjustment. Somebody at some point maybe thought it was a fun accounting procedure, but that's how it works. And so I put in red because this time the class 3 price was so high, they had to reduce the value paid to producers. So if we took another example where, you know, if you go back a few months when the PPD was positive, when the class 3 price was lower, the pool dollars available was this big pot, and then you got paid on USDA class 3 prices, which was not a really high price. Well, to make up for that, because there's a lot of dollars in the pool, then you get it on your milk check through a positive PPD. And so it's really just an accounting procedure that it would be a lot simpler and a lot less headaches, I think, on reading your statement if they just pay the average price. But the way it works is just an adjustment to what was available in the pool. And so it's, you know, USDA is not taking money to pay for administrative fee. It's just really, I mean, they do take a small administrative fee, but it's not what is costing the PPD changes here that we've seen in the last month. And really what causes the larger the PPD that we see is the difference between class 3 and class 4. Class 4 being the second largest, you know, production. So that's for California. If you look here at the difference between class 4 minus class 3, like I mentioned, when we started the order, you know, go back late 2019, you have a positive class 4 minus class 3 because class 4 is higher. And now going June, class 3 is way higher than class 4. And so we've got this negative difference between class 4 and class 3. And if you look at the PPD, and I purposefully put my charts a little bit uneven, so I apologize for people who like things straight. But it's just to show the zero line really close to each other so you can see that they're highly correlated. I mean, they're not the same. Sometimes you'll have one that's higher than the other and the PPD will go in the other way. You know, you see that in January here where the PPD was positive and that the class 4 was, the class 3 was higher. But overall, you can see a really strong relationship between these two. And the reason is because if you're paid really high on class 3 and the class 4 is not contributing anything, well, not anything, but like a much lower value to the pool, USDA has to adjust for that through the PPD. And so those two are really correlated. And so on any given month, if you're looking at class prices, you're like, oh, I wonder what the PPD will be next month. I mean, getting the actual numbers a bit harder, but you can get a pretty good idea whether it's going to be positive or negative, and if it's going to be a big one or a small one, just by looking at the relationship between class 3 and class 4. And so if we go to, you know, specifically the month of June, what we've seen, the class 3 was really high at 2104. You saw the announced blend price from USDA was 13.13, which is a little bit better than last few months, but not as much as you would expect with such a high class 3 price. But because none of the class 3 was in the pool, USDA had to adjust the blend price, or you can call it pool price, the same thing, down by $7.91. And that is at LA. And so that's another feature of the federal milk marketing order, is that there's different regional differences in what producers are paid. And so the negative $7.91 is in LA, which is the base zone. You know, it doesn't have any location adjustment, but you have to add to the PPD a location adjustment depending on where your milk goes. And so the negative PPD on your milk check would have been a range likely between negative $7.91 up to negative $8.41 if your milk is shipped, for example, to Tulare, which is the lowest location differential. And, you know, processors have the option to charge the whole PPD or not. It's not like a mandatory, you know, if they're not participating in the pool, they can really pay what they want under the federal order. And, you know, we've seen in June, from what I've seen, a lot have paid the actual, not paid, taken out the actual PPD, but they've compensated some with a premium on some of the dollars that they've gained from that depooling gain that I mentioned earlier. So this is kind of where we're at with June milk. And to further compound the problem of this low blend price is even the class 1 price was low in June because class 1 is priced in advance. And so the May prices, the beginning of May, was what was used to price class 1 for June. And so the higher increase in prices had not started to kick in yet. And so even the dollars coming from class 1 in June weren't high. Now, the July price for class 1 is significantly higher because it used the first 10 days of June to price it. And so those higher dollars will keep moving in, but there's a lag because the way that class 1 is priced is in advance. And so the first part of June is what is used for the class 1 July price. Whereas when you look at the class 3 June price, well, those are the June prices that are used in it. So it's the actual month. So it can create a little bit of a lag. And so as we go into July, we already know that the class 1 value is higher. The class 3 is actually looking higher, closer to $24. So we're still going to have a negative PPD, but everything is shifting upward. So that blend price should also be going upward, which is, you know, the positive in all this. I put a few terms here just because it's just FMMO lingo or things you might hear. So I just mentioned the statistical uniform price. That's what USDA refers to. You could call it the blend price. You could call it the pool price. I think these three could be used mostly interchangeably. That's what they announce on the minimum regulated price. And that's when they announce it, it's at LA. And so I mentioned that location differential, that 1313, you would have to take 50 cents to get your, you know, regional blend. And again, that's where your milk goes, not where your dairy is located. So if you're in Tulare and your neighbor ships in Tulare and you're in Tulare and you ship to LA, your price might have a 50-cent difference just because of that location differential. Now, your transportation costs obviously be higher, but that's an incentive that the federal order put in place to incentivize milk to move to higher fluid use areas typically. Now, the all milk price is something that is used nationally. It's not necessarily related to the federal order. It's what USDA used to measure what is the price paid to producers across the country, and they do it regionally. I've been using it on our newsletter for the forecast just because under the federal order, there's a lot more variation now in what producers are paid. And I think in June, I've seen a range of about $8 to $9 from the lowest pay to the highest, which I've never seen in our California system. I mean, this is really a new thing with the federal order because it allows such a discrepancy between what people are paid. So the all milk price is really the average of what all the producers are paid in the state. And so that would be the California all milk price. USDA releases those numbers on a monthly basis, you know, after the fact to kind of monitor where price is going in each region. So that all milk price would take into account, you know, the pooling distribution in the area, the premiums that are paid. It would take really, it's the average prices that's received by producers. And the overbase price is a no longer used terms, really. It was under the California system. That was the price of non-quota milk. It was kind of the minimum pay price that we used as a benchmark in the state, but now we don't really use that term anymore unless we're trying to do comparison of what the overbase would have been versus the full price under the federal order. So we don't really use that anymore, but I thought that was an important thing to kind of separate these things because you might hear of the statistical uniform price and the all milk price, and they're different things, even though they're both calculated by USDA. And yeah, so I mentioned, well, now that I've showed the slide, I might as well have it. I put it there in case that question came up. This is a slide that Dr. Stevenson put together for our meetings before the federal order a few years ago. And it just shows, you know, since 2000, what would have been the incentive for each of these classes to pool or not pool milk. And that's what I was referring to earlier. If you look in the red section in the middle there for class 3, those are the percentage time where they would have had an incentive to be pooled. But if you look in, you know, most of the time in most of the zones, class 3 does not have a strong incentive, not a majority of the time. It's pretty close, not a huge margin, but most of the time has an incentive to be out. Where for class 4, most of the time there's a strong incentive to pool. And the reason for that is just over time, class 4 is tended to average lower than the class 3 price. And so those were the slides I prepared on the PPD. Hopefully that provided some highlights, and I will unmute everybody again so that we can answer questions. And I did that earlier, so surely I can do it again. And you can start thinking about your questions while I do that. Mute. Nope, I want to unmute. There we go. Okay, so if you have questions now, I think I should be able to hear.
Annie, to go back to the de-pooling, so the decision to de-pool can be made after the prices are announced. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Annie, you said earlier that if we were still on the old price system, there would have been about a $4 spread in June's milk. If everybody's looking at their checks, the PPD in Tulare would have been $8.41. So if your PPD, I can use Land O'Lakes because that's what I ship to, was $3.75. So really, Land O'Lakes paid back $4.66 of that $8.41. So actually did a little better than the spread. So when somebody, I think, asked about, where the money's going in the pockets, the money's all still in California. It's your individual co-op or independent that depends on how they're depooling and what they're sharing of their profits. So the money's still there. Just somebody like Hillmar with a cheese right now is quite a bit higher. Whereas in early, when this federal order first come in, they were actually behind because they weren't as high as class 4. I'm taking it that's correct, or any corrections would be appreciated.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think that's what it's done is the pie probably hasn't changed that much. It's just been spread out a little bit more wider than what we had under the California system, where the prices tend to be more uniform. Now it's really great what you said. So the average I calculated was $4.50 in June at LA area, so that'd be close to $5. And so basically, it sounds like you would probably been a wash under the system. So you're not like that much lower on your statement. And so people can look and kind of get an idea, but there's a wide range of what is being paid out. And so I think it worked out really good for you this month. Like you pointed out, for the cheese guys, it's working out really good this month. But a year ago, it wasn't working as good when they were, or maybe even in April, actually, when the CME price collapsed, they felt that really quickly. Whereas, some milk checks were a little bit more even. And so I think the pot of money has not changed drastically. It's just distributed a little bit differently, and it creates wider gaps from a month to month, depending who you ship to. So yeah, I think that's a good observation.
Yeah, but Land O'Lakes sends a lot of their milk to Saputo. So didn't the money stay in Saputo's pocket?
No, that's where the 466 came. That's where the 466 came. Saputo only can depool their direct shippers because it's whoever has the milk. So that's actually where Land O'Lakes is doing their depooling. They're depooling the cheese milk that we have that goes into Saputo, keeping those funds, and that's where they're passing back the lower PPD than what's reported by the state.
Right. So Saputo can make the decision on their direct shippers, but on the milk that's handled by Land O'Lakes, they can make that decision, and Land O'Lakes could decide they could keep that money if they wanted to, or like they did, and apparently in this example, right, they made the decision to pass it back to their members. And so because Land O'Lakes handles that milk going to Saputo, they make that decision whether that milk goes in or out. So some of the dollars stayed with Saputo on whatever they decided to do. Actually, I haven't seen a Saputo check, so I can't confirm. I'm not trying to speak knowledge of the Saputo, what's happening with them, but they can do what they want on their direct shippers. But Land O'Lakes on those contracts can handle that depooling decision.
Yeah, and that works with anybody, and it's for CDI also, because CDI does business with Saputo, Kraft, any of them. If you handle the shippers, you're the one that has the option to depool or not just the processing plant.
Yeah, and that is a processing decision. That's not a producer decision. So as a producer, you can't decide whether you want to participate in the pool or not. That really resides with whoever's handling the milk.
Yeah, it's the milk handler, but the third party's not. So if Kraft or Saputo, the milk that they're purchasing from Land O'Lakes, CDI, DFA, they don't have the power to do it. Land O'Lakes, CDI, and DFA, Hillmar, they're the ones that can decide to pool or depool, even if they're selling the milk to somebody else to process it. Correct?
Yep.
So Steve, did Land O'Lakes depool that milk that went to Saputo?
Yeah. I know this is not supposed to be just a Land O'Lakes discussion, but Land O'Lakes is built about 40-60 on how much milk goes to cheese and how much milk goes to butter powder. So Land O'Lakes pretty much has 40% of their milk depooled at all times, and whatever they're making from that, they're passing back to the producer. So if class 4 was higher, we'd actually make a little bit more because that would be depooled to 60%. When the cheese is higher, we have 40%, that 40% depooled, and that milk gets passed back. But each co-op can decide how much to pass back and when to pass it back. So far, we're passing it all back, but And it depends on how your co-op's built. If it only has 20% milk going to cheese plant somewhere and 80%, you probably don't play this game quite as well at the moment. But if it's swapped and you had your 80% of your milk going to butter powder and you wanted to depool more, you would be ahead in that game. So it depends on how your co-op's built as to how it can work.
Yep, absolutely. And we saw some of that when the order started and the relationship was flipped, right? Where class 4 price was higher. Those were more heavy on the class 4 side, had a lot more options in terms of, passing back dollars, whereas now things have switched. But that's the nature of the Fed order, is it does allow processors, whether they're co-ops or proprietary, a lot of flexibilities and a lot more flexibility than they had under the California system.
And if we were still in the California system, we'd be $4 average, 100 higher in June, or did you do those numbers, or just curiosities?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm going to get quoted on this number, and that's going to backfire. But yeah, so my estimate is about $4.50. It would have been $4.50 higher in June on the regulated price. So as the discussion we've been talking about, a lot of people in their statement are going to get more than the regulated price this month. But if you're just looking at the regulated price, it would have been higher by, about $4.50 in June. So if there's no other questions, this meeting, we have it recording. Hopefully it did record. Been trying to keep track. We probably will do like a little special maybe on the podcast. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, feel free to hop on that on your favorite platform. Or on Apple, Spotify, and we've been trying to keep members updated on different means, since we can't really meet in person, and at times we get tired of reading the same thing. So we've been trying to diversify. Hopefully you found this, quick discussion on the PPD helpful to you, answered questions. If you have more questions, I'll hang out for a few minutes. If you want to keep asking, if something comes to mind later, you can always send me an email at annie@wudairies.com. And I think any other questions, I'll open it now for a few more minutes. And then, like I said, feel free to email me or call. And hopefully, this price relationship, it doesn't really matter what the relationship does. Hopefully both prices keep going up so that the return on your milk check keeps going up in the next few months. So thank you for attending. Like I said, I'll hang out. If you don't have any questions, well, have a great day, and hopefully we'll be able to do more of these in the near future. Thank you for joining.
Annie, before everyone gets off, I'd be curious to know what everyone feels about this type of meeting, especially during COVID, where they can actually contact you and have some interaction with you. Just some comments from the people on the call. I'd like to hear there's some feedback regarding this meeting.
Feedback always welcomed.
Yeah, this is the most efficient way, COVID or not. Now I can get right back to work. So yeah, this is the way I'd like it to continue.
I think the same thing. I've actually had headphones in and actually been in my barn and doing things while we've been on this conversation. So I like getting information this way.
I think there's so much misinformation out there. We need to have a source of good quality, accurate information. And I think this is extremely important because, like I say, there's so much misinformation out there that we need to get cleared up.
Yep, and that's our goal, right? We're trying to share the facts to hopefully, you guys have the real information. And I know coffee shop talk probably hasn't happened as much because coffee shops are closed these days, but yeah, we're always happy to try to share as much information as we can so that, you can make the best decisions and be well informed. So thanks for the feedback. That's great.
Once again, thank you for your time, Annie.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anytime. And hopefully we'll be doing a few more of these, like pick a topic, short and sweet. Like you said, go back to work when you're done, and hopefully have, answered some of your questions in the meantime. So, like I said, feel free to hang up. I'll just hang around for a few more minutes, and then this will be recorded. So if you want to get back to it, or you know somebody who would be interested, we'll have it probably as a bonus episode on the podcast, and we'll link to it on our website as well. So thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Danny.